In this video, we're going to look back at Chris Paul's magical 2015 Game 7 against the Spurs. One of the things the Clippers like to do around this time was get Chris Paul against a fellow point guard, but in the mid-post, because Chris Paul was so strong that he was able to win that matchup even with, the height deficiency he had. Here he's matched up against Tony Parker, and DeAndre Jordan gets him the ball and walks up to set a screen. When DeAndre Jordan actually set screens and made contact, he was one of the game's elite screeners. Obviously, he was an insane roll man, but look at how much space Chris Paul gets coming off this Jordan screen because Tony Parker gets washed out of the play. Parker's going to try to come back, and he falls for the Chris Paul pump fake. And this is going to give Chris Paul a wide open jumper. Chris Paul shot 49.5% on long twos this year. He was insane. This is another one of the staples the Clippers used to run back then. It's a double high pick and roll. Tony Parker thinks Blake Griffin's going to be setting the screen and Chris Paul will go that way. Instead, Chris Paul's going to spin back the other way and use Jordan as the roll man. As Jordan rolls, look at the gravity he has. He ends up taking Thiago's splitter with him, and Chris Paul's going to funnel this pass right to Blake Griffin at a sweet spot. Blake wasn't a great mid-range shooter, but he was reliable, and he's going to can this. It just tells you how much chemistry they all had. It's early, and the Clippers run another pet play. This time, JJ Redick cross screens against Kawhi Leonard. This is designed to get Matt Barnes to sneak out and curl up off of DeAndre Jordan, and he does. Jordan screens against Tim Duncan. However, Chris Paul's already passing the ball to where Barnes will be because he knows, this play has been ingrained for them. As Barnes catches, Jordan knows to slide out and screen Kawhi Leonard, and it's an open three for Matt Barnes. This tells you the level of chemistry they all had. This is another double high screen set. Glenn Davis is one of the screeners, but Chris Paul goes off the DeAndre Jordan screen. Just watch how Paul goes left, and this is going to draw Boris Diaw. And then he cuts and snakes back to the right. This one simple cutback actually traumatizes the defense. 3 defenders are pulled with him, and Paul's little pump fake, shot fake, whatever you want to call it, draws them. And Glenn Davis is wide open, so Chris Paul passes back, and it's an open mid-range jumper. No one's even close to him. He's going to can it, and this is the level of intelligence Chris Paul had. This is part of Chris Paul's mastery. It even comes out into play on the defensive end. As Ginobili drives off of the screen, Chris Paul's going to go up the wing with Patty Mills. And as Diaw drives, Chris Paul decides enough is enough, so he actually digs down and tries to swipe the ball from Boris Diaw, and he does. He gets a steal, and it's going to go back the other way. However, as he makes this plant with his left leg, that's where the hamstring strain comes up in Game 7. As you're going to end up seeing, Chris Paul actually grabs towards it as he runs up the floor, which makes what's about to happen all the more incredible. As he dribbles, he's going to recognize the defense isn't giving him respect, and Patty Mills actually tries to cross in front of him. However, Chris is so strong, he pushes Patty Mills away and gets a little push off in space. Chris Paul gets a wide open three here with a bum hamstring, and he knocks it down. He's nuts. This is what Chris Paul actually does really well. He gets the ball here, and he gets a screen from DeAndre Jordan. Kawhi Leonard tries to ice this, so Chris already has him going the wrong way. Chris goes left, Kawhi's going right. As Chris comes downhill, Jordan makes excellent contact to keep Kawhi Leonard at bay for a moment. Then, Paul gives the subtle little "I'm pulling up into my pet" shot from the mid-range to Duncan, and Duncan falls for it, which allows Paul to dribble around him. As Paul gets to the nail, Kawhi Leonard's trailing him, and this is where Chris wants him. Chris then turns and gets level with Kawhi and actually does a little push-off, but watch how far this step by Chris Paul goes. He hops into a jumper, and Kawhi's trying to recover to this, but he can't close the distance. And when Paul goes up for the jumper, it is contested, but Chris is so good that this is the shot he's, just perfected over time, and he knocks it down. Yet another instance of how smart Chris Paul is just how much he can push it in transition even with one good leg. Kawhi Leonard's in good defensive position here, and Chris is actually just going to take him right off the dribble. As Chris kind of lulls him to sleep, he then just hard dribbles right to the right, and this draws Thiago's splitter, who shouldn't be there. He should be back with Glenn Davis, but because Kawhi couldn't contain him, it allows Chris Paul to get the pass to Glenn Davis, and the paint is wide open because Splitter can't get back in time, and Glenn Davis actually finishes nicely around the rim. This is Chris Paul just at his best in transition. He still does this to this day. If you notice Tim Duncan, Chris Paul's going to use Tim Duncan, who is on the opposite team, as a screener. Duncan's running to the paint, and Chris knows this, and Duncan actually screens Bellinelli for Chris Paul. Chris then decelerates, steps into this jumper, and look, Bellinelli's trying to get there, and he actually makes a reasonable attempt. Bellinelli closes the distance, gets his arm up, but Chris is too good. This is a pull-up 3 for Chris Paul, and, you know, with this much space, you might as well just let it go. The Spurs are in transition, and Chris, you know, one good leg, I gotta remind you, one good leg. He doesn't stop hustling. He is hustling back. Tony Parker's dribbling in transition, and Parker sees him and tries to take him to the hole. But Chris does a solid job of staying vertical here without fouling, and he's going to end up forcing a miss. Now, that's only half the job for him. As the ball gets kind of loose and, you know, DeAndre corrals it and passes to Chris, Chris has his head up for a moment and sees Blake Griffin. This is all he needed. Chris corrals it, throws the ball, makes a jump pass, kind of, you know, angling back behind himself, throws a jump pass, bullets it right to Blake. Blake one dribbles and makes the right read. He passes off to JJ Redick, who is wide open on the wing. And if we know anything, JJ Redick wide open, you might as well just cash it. This is one of the crazier shots Chris hits in the game, but it starts with something simple. He actually, you know, he kind of lunges in front of Kawhi to deny Kawhi a rebound chance on a missed free throw. Chris then jukes Manu Ginobili the second he gathers the ball, which tells you how smart and aware he is. He dribbles around Ginobili, he gets into the front court, and yeah, this is kind of a lucky shot because he brings the ball to his shoulder, but this is foreshadowing. He's going to do this later on the game winner that everyone knows. He gets good elevation, it's to his shoulder a little bit, he heaves it, he's going to get lucky, banks it in. Just, Chris Paul is just magnificent. Another one of the things the Clippers did well around this time was, you know, kind of murder against switches. Chris has the ball here facing up at the elbow, and Blake's going to walk across. It looks like he's setting a screen, but he's not. He's just pivoting in front of a smaller guy. And this is going to put Tiago Splitter on Chris Paul, and Blake Griffin gets to work against Patty Mills. But as Blake makes the catch, the Spurs send a hard double. They do not want Blake attacking that mismatch. It's late in the clock. Chris gets the ball back. Tiago's matched up against him. It's Chris and Tiago, but Tiago's playing him to the left, and Chris is fine with that. And as we see, Chris hard plants with his right foot. This one simple action is going to drive Tiago Splitter back, and Splitter can't navigate the space fast enough to end up contesting the shot well enough to deter Chris Paul from making it. Chris gets a solid look, and he's going to knock it down. This might have been only his third most absurd shot of the night, which is saying a lot. Chris has it in transition. It's what he does best. Patty Mills jumps up to try to kind of give him something to think about, and, you know, that's smart to do. But Chris is ready for it. He's going to spin back the other way, get a screen, a good screen by DeAndre Jordan against Patty Mills. Chris is going to go downhill against Tim Duncan. Now, it should have happened because DeAndre is rolling here. Blake should have popped more to the arc because DeAndre's gravity will take the defense inside. Chris passes it to Blake, and then he's going to get the ball back at the elbow. This is prime Chris Paul. Ain't no one better at this in the NBA. Elbow jumpers, Chris Paul has mastered this. Chris faces up against Patty Mills. Jab step. Patty Mills already going back. Patty has to react to that because Chris will go by you with ease. He's got great one-step quickness. Patty's going back. All his weight's transferred on his back leg. Chris is going up with the shot. Chris gets good elevation. Patty's still grounded to the floor. Chris knocks it down, and the Clippers take the lead with about 8:30 to go in the fourth quarter. All right, so here's the shot. Let's diagnose this. Side out of bounds, Chris gets the ball from Blake. Chris working against Danny Green. Danny thinks the screen is coming. It's not. Chris takes him immediately off the dribble, doesn't want to waste time. Chris then gets level to Danny Green, which is a plus for Chris Paul. Now on one bum leg, that's not going to be all it takes. So Chris is going to dribble. He's going downhill, ends up getting into the body of Danny Green, and drives him backwards towards Tim Duncan to create even more space. As Chris goes up with the awkward right-handed shot, Duncan does an excellent job of contesting, but it's not going to matter, and it's one of the greatest buzzer beaters, technically, we've ever seen. So here's the baseline angle of that last shot. Chris is going to swipe Danny's hand away from him, which is going to allow Chris to get a little bit of separation. Danny tries to hand check him again, and Chris gets into his body. Chris is such a strong guy that he's able to lean on you and create space, and as we see, he does push off, but Danny doesn't have the core strength that Chris does, so Chris gets that separation, and he goes up into the shot, and Duncan does his best to contest, but it's not going to matter. 27 points in a closeout game, 91.5 true shooting percentage. One of the greatest Game 7 performances we'll ever see by a guy on one leg with a game winner and two other incredible shots. Chris Paul was just awesome.